Hi everyone, welcome back to Tokyo on Fire. Today is February 13th, 2018. Okinawa has always been a hotbed of political activity, and last week there was an election for mayor. The current mayor was going up for election, he stood for election, and he got beat. Michael, it means a lot to the United States forces moving to Henoko.
You have to give a little bit of the backstory. Mr. Inamine, who was the incumbent, had shifted the opinion in his area against the base, and he had in fact led a government inside his local assembly that was contrary to the building of the base. Now, when the Abe administration came in, they put on a full press on Okinawa and indeed have started the preliminary construction on the base, which is supposed to be in the bay, which is Nago Bay, at a place called Henoko.
Right.
And so this was going to be a second round. The anti-base forces had won 4 years ago, and this was a second try. And this time it seems that Mr. Abe was not going to lose a second time, and through various and sundry promises, which were all tacit and off the screen, a challenger, Mr. Toguchi, was successful in challenging the anti-base movement, and which is supported by the main government of Okinawa Prefecture.
Opinion polls even today, Michael, say that the opposition to moving to Henoko is 2/3 over the people who want it there, and still they won the election.
Yeah, this is one of the interesting things that I think that we have to, in looking at this issue and looking at this particular election and the one that's coming up, which is the Nago City Assembly election, where the legislators for this town will be chosen, and again the government forces may win there. But I mean the central government forces, not the Okinawa government forces, but the central government may see a pro-base majority in what is currently an anti-base assembly. We have to take a step back and think about the resources that the national government and the LDP can put into a single local election. Mm-hmm. And turnout was incredibly high for it's basically an off-schedule election.
76%.
A huge turnout, much greater than national elections get. So clearly there was push from both the anti-base side trying to save itself and a serious effort, you can almost say an operation, by the central government to support a candidate who was not fully, clearly in the pro-base. He was basically neutral, or at least no comment on whether he was for the base relocation or not.
Mr. Toguchi, a former assemblyman in the Nago Assembly.
Yeah, so you can talk about it being something of a shot in the dark by the LDP, and indeed, Inamine himself in the past has been on different sides in this issue. So you have to say, okay, there's Okinawa Prefecture, and then there's Nago City, and I don't think that persons who may feel a great deal of sympathy for the Okinawan position, which is very rational, why do we have 75%, or maybe a little bit less now, of the
U.S. forces,
U.S. basing on our tiny island? Mm-hmm. Why is that? How is that in any way fair? Versus Nago City. Now, Nago City was chosen back in the 90s as the relocation spot, and they accepted it. And they received in return a whole slew, an immense amount of government spending, contracts, all kinds of things, which they all spent. Mm-hmm. And then after they had received all of the goodies before a single pile had ever been driven, they switched around and said, we don't want the base.
Right. Change our mind.
And now they've come back and they're selling the same horse twice.
Right.
And they say, oh, maybe we'll take the base. And they're going to get all these goodies all over again. We'll see if the central government is stupid this time and does exactly the same thing, which is pay in advance. Mm-hmm. And then they can go against the base again. Who knows? But they've already accepted the largesse from the central government in compensation, and they're going to get it again. Well, so for the Nago City, I think should be set aside as a special case. Of, they've had it pretty good.
Sure. One of the things Okinawans almost invariably complain about is the heavy hand of Tokyo in implementing, Tokyo's will throughout all of Okinawa, the poorest prefecture of all 47.
Yeah, and that was always something that they really could do. But it seems as now, though, that the Okinawans have a better position as a prefecture. There's no question that the central government can dominate an election in a local, in a small community like Nago.
Right.
There's no question that they can shift a few thousand votes through offering offers of future subsidies, of future budget allocations, all kinds of things. You can buy votes on a small scale, but on a prefectural scale, it gets much more difficult. And in this case, I think that the Okinawans have a much stronger position for resistance when we look at the December election for the governor, where Governor Onaga is going up for his re-election, as Inamine was going for the Nago City election. When Governor Onaga is in place, then you have tourism, you have new business. There are a lot of things like telephone call centers that work out
universities.
There are
lots of things.
There's the things that they used to not have. They used to be very dependent on the bases and very dependent on government spending. That's the Okinawan economy, particularly with the arrival of East Asians, whether it's South Koreans, whether it's Chinese vacationing in Okinawa. That gives them far more leverage on a prefecture-wide basis to resist the obvious pressures and inducements of the main island government.
The victory was won by a very narrow margin, 3,500 votes.
That's still a great deal when you think about it. It's a big chunk. It's 3,500 out of fewer than 60,000 votes. That's not a bad win.
Well, what it tells you, though, is that they voted with their pocketbooks, not so much with the politics. They want their city to flourish and get all of the largest it can from Tokyo, but also have a good lifestyle for their the people that live there.
Yeah, and the history's on their side. They were able to get it and then walk away from the deal in the past. Maybe they think they'll get away with it again. And given the importance of the move of Henoko to of Tenma to Henoko for the Abe government's reputation, not only vis-a-vis Japan's conservatives, but also vis-a-vis the United States, it's very likely that the whip hand is still in the citizens of Nago City, who at some point in the future can always turn their backs on the deal.
Well, the reason why we talk about this is because geopolitically it is very important that the Marine Air Base moves from Fatima to Henoko.
Or at least stays within Okinawa, at least for the geostrategic positioning of the United States. That's always been the reason why these forces cannot be moved somewhere else. Okinawa is where they must be, has been the United States' position. If that is so, where can they be on the island? Because where they are now is simply too dangerous for civilians. And that has been absolutely hammered home this past winter as helicopters have been going down, both SDF, self-defense forces, but also pieces of U.S. helicopters have been falling off. And every time something lands somewhere, of course, helicopters are not, a very stable platform. Things are going to sometimes come loose, come off, whatever, no matter how well you do it. I mean, the tragic accident in Saga involving the SDF helicopter that just fell out of the sky, that all is playing to the narrative that the Tenma base must be moved and it must go to Henoko. And the election is just simply one chapter in what is a long-term story that is going to continue as long as the United States insists on having a position on Okinawa.
Is this the end of the story for Henoko? Mayor Toguchi is now in office, and does that mean that construction will now sail?
I think it's going to be very good and very clear for them. Nevertheless, there will still be grandmas at the gates lying down in front of the trucks. They will have to be removed. There will be all kinds
There's a lawsuit going on.
There are all kinds of protests that will continue to go on. The government will make every effort that no one ever gets killed in any of these protests because death is in protest reverberates over the decades. But there's going to be constant conflict. At the same time, there is the ocean there. And indeed, they have made most of the effort not bringing getting trucks in, but indeed doing everything from the sea. And at that point, you're dealing with a few kayakers, and they have been relatively easy to handle.
Right. The only other important thing about why we're talking about this is because it tees up the governor's race. Before the governor's race is the assembly race. And this looks like the LDP, since it's won this time, it really needs to win number 2, perhaps, but definitely number 3.
Number 3 seems to be what they really want to do. I still doubt that they have the momentum to do so. As I said, it's a lot more expensive than I think they can afford in terms of promises, and that the Okinawan economy is simply too diversified.
Right. Moving the Marine Air Base from Futenma to Henoko is a big issue that we've been watching for a long time. We're going to continue to watch this. You should too.